All right, welcome back, Chelsea fans, to another episode of the London is Blue podcast. I, of course, am your host, Nick, joined by Matt Law for a Matt Law special. Matt, how are we doing?
All good, all good. Much better for not being at a terrible West Ham match that I was at last night, but all good otherwise.
Why were you at a terrible West Ham match last night?
I had to report it. I don't only ever report on Chelsea and Tottenham. I occasionally spread my wings. So I was reporting on West Ham versus Newcastle. It had some interest for Chelsea fans, of course. Didn't quite go the way they probably wanted. They wanted a favour off Mr. Potter, but it was a woeful match, dreadful. And if you think, I know we're going to get onto it, but if you think the atmosphere inside Stamford Bridge is bad, which it can be, oh my God, go to the London Stadium. Worst atmosphere in the Premier League.
Is it just because of the setup, or is it their team has been so bad they just don't really have it, or
It's
what?
both. It's both. It can be okay in there on a European night when they've been in Europa League and things. But the stadium's bad for atmosphere, and also their season's like they've got nothing to play for now. They're not going down. They're not going to achieve anything. It was so flat. It was ridiculous.
Well, we're talking on Tuesday, March 11th. This will go out on Wednesday, March 12th. As of recording, Liverpool are going to easily cruise the league on 70 points. Arsenal
Correct.
on 55 points. Forest on 51 points. Chelsea on 49 points. City, Newcastle on 47 points each, with City just having a better goal diff. So that's fifth and sixth. Brighton on 46 points in seventh. Villa on 45 points in eighth. Bournemouth on 44 in ninth. That's basically the jumble from, let's call it, third to ninth. There's only a 7-point difference between all of these places. Chelsea have just completed 2 league wins over Southampton and Leicester, although I would say the Leicester game was maybe not as convincing as we hoped it would be. We have an upcoming match against Copenhagen on Thursday to advance to the next round of the UECL. Thoughts about I mean, everyone says Europa Conference. I don't know, just UECL's
I
better.
like it. I like it.
Yeah. Any thoughts on where we are right now? Just, the business has been done. We said you had to win these 3 matches. You have to win Copenhagen on Thursday, obviously. Thoughts
are, well, I'm going to give you a little exclusive. I know internally at Chelsea, and they have been doing a little bit of data modeling over the last few weeks. And the data modeling they came up with suggested that they needed, at a minimum, to finish before the international break with at least 49 points. So the Leicester win, albeit not convincing and not particularly impressive in many respects, has been viewed as very important internally because they've hit what their data modeling suggested a bare minimum they needed to be on going into that international break to really, after the international break, give them a good chance of Champions League qualification. So there's a little exclusive for you. So that win was viewed as a big win. They are where I thought they would be. I was convinced, it's no great big take, but I was convinced they'd beat Southampton and Leicester. I think they're in a good position. It's, they have a tough run of games and you can make arguments for and against, but at the end of the day, it is in their hands and that's where you want it to be. And you have to hope now that against some better opposition that the performance level will increase because it will need to. But I think they are well placed. I mean, it is the only interesting thing left in the league, quite frankly. The title race, as you said, is done and dusted. Relegation is done and dusted. There's no other stories. The only story is the whole European qualification shakedown from Champions League to Conference League, and as you say, that takes in third place down to ninth. 10th will still be thinking about Conference League qualification. And that's all there is to play. And the other interesting thing about it is so many of those teams, because there's so many involved, they virtually all have to play each other at some stage. I mean, I was looking last night at the West Ham Newcastle game. Again, when Newcastle are winning, I start to look at it again. And 3 games out to the end of the season, Newcastle-Chelsea just stands out like a sore thumb. Absolutely massive game in prospect at the moment. But we don't know where we'll be before then. But Chelsea are well set. Look, I know we're going to get onto the intricacies of it and the performances and whatnot, but in terms of where they are right now, they are well set.
So the rest of the season, pretty simple, straightforward, right? Arsenal on Sunday, Spurs after the international break. Of course, they have Copenhagen Thursday, so that's before those two. Brentford on April 6th, Ipswich Town on April 12th, Fulham on April 19th, Everton on April 26th, Liverpool on May 3rd, Newcastle on May 10th, and United on the 18th, finishing with Nottingham Forest on the 25th. Certainly not the easiest run before the end of the season.
It's not the easiest run, but at this time of the season, everyone can make a case for their teams running having difficult games in there. Chelsea's is on paper one of the harder runs. I'll certainly grant you that. And I do think they're going to have to win an away game, which is probably where my only doubt is in the back of my head, is where's the away win coming from? Because their away form in the league hasn't been good. And I do think they'll need, let's say they win all their home games, or they maybe draw one home game. They're going to need, I still think they're going to need an away win in there. And I also think the other thing, I think Arsenal on Sunday is a little bit of a shot to nothing. I think anything they can get or do get or might get would be a bonus. I think Tottenham at home after the international break is huge, absolutely massive. They have to win that match. And you never quite know what you get with Tottenham. I predicted the other week they're going to have a great run in, and then, of course, they go and look terrible against Bournemouth. So what do I know? But you just don't know what you're going to get with them. You could turn up and beat them 5-1 one day and lose 4-1 to them another day because of the nature of how they are. And I just think for the tone of the other games and to relieve pressure on themselves or not put themselves under too much pressure, beating Tottenham after the international break is really paramount. I honestly see Arsenal, other than getting thrashed, I see Arsenal as a bit of a shot to nothing, if I'm honest with you. If they lose and a few results are going to go against them, then still not going to be in a bad position. If they draw, I think it's a bonus point. And I mean, if they won, crikey, next time we talk, I think I'd be talking very confidently about them qualifying for the Champions League.
Opta still has Chelsea in fifth, only picking up 15 more points between now and the end of the season. So that's out of a possible, what is that, like 20?
Well, what is there? 10? There must be 10 games left. Is there not 10 games left?
Yeah, out of possible 30.
So 30 points, yeah.
So 15
Half
out of
a point.
30. Can Chelsea get 15 out of 30?
Well, look, they should do. They should do. Like I said, they've put themselves in a good position. If they don't get 15 out of 30, they've chucked it away. It's their own stupid fault. They've not left themselves too much to do. They have left themselves a very achievable target.
Let's pretend that you get a point against Arsenal. I think that's probably the most you can expect on Sunday, just being candid. You have to beat Tottenham at home, agreed. Brentford, probably on the beach at this point. Not a whole lot to play for. But that's
Brentford, their home form is terrible lately. Brentford's a chance. They've got to be going to Brentford looking for that away win.
Totally. Yeah, I think that is the one probably as you look ahead. So that's 7 points if we're predicting. Ipswich Town has to be a win this time. That's at home,
Yeah.
so that's 10.
Up to 10 away.
Fulham away, I just don't feel great about. I don't know why. Never do.
But it's another chance. It's another chance.
It is. Call it a draw. Have to beat Everton at home. Liverpool will have likely won the league by the time they come to Stamford Bridge on May 3rd. Be nice to get something from that. Not expecting anything. Newcastle feels like a loss. At this point with the trajectories, I just don't see
Newcastle are going to be really interesting because teams in cup finals tend to go very heavily one way or the other. They either flunk after cup finals or they soar after cup finals. It's hard to call, but Newcastle will be really interesting. I'm finding Newcastle quite difficult to predict because of that cup final. Although at the start of the season, when we had to do our season predictions, I did have Newcastle in fifth place.
Chelsea, Man United at home.
I mean, you've got to win that game. You've got
Have to. Have
if you
to.
go into that game needing to win that game to qualify, it, apart from the name Manchester United, it's a fantastic game. They're like 14th in the Premier League or something. It's a great game.
And then Forest away to close. I don't see
That's a
that
horrible
happening.
game. You want it. You
Yeah,
want it done by that game. You want that Man
agree.
United game to be the one that clinches it.
So let's count them off. 1, 4,
I think we're well
7,
over 15.
10, 11, 14, 17.
Yeah, and
If you
that was
beat,
why,
if you beat
and
who
I
you're
think
supposed
that's
to beat,
and I think that's why it underlines the importance of that Tottenham victory,
it does.
because
Yeah, that's basically the make or break.
you mess it up against Tottenham, and it becomes really tight, and you have zero room for error.
Well, why don't we start our major point of
It's exciting though,
conversation?
right? This is
Well,
what you support football clubs for. You want to be in this position. I was in this position last season with Villa. You guys are used to winning trophies all the time. I know it. I know that. But it's exciting. You get to look at the fixtures, you get to plan it out, you get to be nervous about it. This is what supporting a football club is about. Yeah, it's good.
it's fun when you're confident. I think that's the place I'm coming at this from. Opta currently giving Chelsea a 36% chance to finish in fifth over Newcastle's 25%, Brighton's 8%, Bournemouth's 6%. So see how that goes. Let's take our first ad break and then come back and talk a little Maresca ball. Why don't we? Thanks to the sponsors, and we'll be right back. All right, Matt. Maresca went a little edgy in the presser after
Yeah.
Leicester, and I think look, idiots like me will make comments all the time on the way that the team is playing and the style and the change that happened midway through the season to, I think, really instill his system and something that wasn't more kind of free flowing like it was last year. Just I'll read some of these quotes, just kind of get your vibe check on what
Yeah.
he's trying to do
Yeah. I
here.
was stood just yards away from him as he's saying it, so I can almost remember how
Yeah.
I was flinching or whatever when he said certain words.
So he was making this comment to a journalist who he knew from Leicester last season. He said, "This guy was with me at Leicester last season. It happened exactly the same. People have to understand this is our way, our style. This is the way we're going to play. When a team creates the amount of chances we created today, you have to be happy. It's not easy." He said, "We need our fans." On my Instagram, I said 2 days ago, our Champions League target will be with our fans supporting us, and especially when you play at home, we need them to be behind the players with the spirit they showed today. So on the play style,
So can I just jump in on that bit? Can we
mhm,
do it section by section? Because that
sure.
section was very dictatorial, I thought.
Hmm.
It was, this is how we are going to play. That
Hmm.
that jumped out at me. This is how we are going to play. It was like there is no room for conversation, debate, plan Bs, plan Cs, plan Ds. This is how we're going to play. And it was almost a bit like, this is how we're going to play, the unsaid bit. So if you don't like it, tough shit, basically. That was the undertone of it.
Yep.
And then the other bit was, you have to be happy. He said something about, we created so many chances, you have to be happy. Very dictatorial again. I mean, you don't have to be happy. No one has to be happy. Everyone's allowed to have an opinion on whether they're happy with the amount of chances or the way they're. But he said, you have to be happy. He was really dictating or trying to dictate to the Chelsea support how they have to think and feel. Carry on.
Yeah, and I think it was really underpinned. Like the quote that's getting passed around from this presser is on the booing of the Enzo Fernandez back pass, right? He said, "But the good thing is that Fernandez knows if he doesn't play back, I will change him. If the keeper plays long, I will change him. This is what we have." And that is connected to, I think, the style of play, right? Where he is saying, "This is what we do. You know, don't worry about the easy forward pass that could spring a counterattack and potentially create another one of your lovely chances that you value so much. we must play in a controlled way. And I do want to underpin this with some stats just to be fair, right? Because while it is not my preferred style of football, I think I've been very clear about that this year. So far this season, we're conceding less shots per game, less XG against, and about the same goals against, just slightly lower. So it is, we're comparing a whole season to only, 2/3 of a season or a little bit more, but like it seems to be working from a defensive standpoint. It's less against, less against, less against. But man, is it boring as shit. And I think that's where the boos are coming from, where it's like we all can see the forward pass that you have to imagine that Enzo Fernandez of all players wants to play. Like in his head, bam, I'm going to hit whoever's on the right wing on the counter, right? Like, do you feel the push and pull between players and philosophy, or do you feel like that is just being overstated in the fandom? And I will accept either answer.
I have not heard anything on the grapevine or through talking to people to suggest that the players are unhappy with the style and they want to play a different style. I don't think it comes naturally, and I think that's where the pull comes from. So I think there is a push and pull, but I think it's not a push and pull through them trying to reject his style or trying to kind of sack off his style and do their own thing. I think they're having to do things that come unnaturally to them. And as per his messaging, I think it's been made crystal clear to them, you do this, wise you don't play. Because I am doing this no matter what. The Enzo situation was really interesting because I'm very privileged to sit right behind the dugout at Chelsea when I go. And when the booing started, well, the smattering of boo, I say started, that makes it sound like this is prolonged boo. There wasn't. But when there was a few boos that were audible when Enzo Fernandez passed back, and it was weird because there was so much space up ahead of him, and it was almost like he robotically turned to. Anyway, the booing happened, and Enzo Maresca immediately started clapping very enthusiastically, clapping towards Fernandez. So he was almost putting himself up against the crowd. The crowd boo, I'm going to clap really loudly. They don't know what they're talking about. You're doing what I want you to talk about. And I do feel his messaging was really, really risky because everything about it in the undertones of what he said and how he acted felt like them and us. The fans want one thing, the fans like one thing, but this is how we're doing it. Doesn't matter if you don't like it. You have to be happy. Unbelievable quote, really. You have to like this. I'm giving you no choice. You have to like this. And to these players, if you listen to them, you're out. If you listen to me, they might boo you. Who cares? If you listen to them, you're out. Now, it's right in a way because he is the manager of the football team and the fans aren't. But I think it's very risky messaging, very risky indeed. And it didn't need to be that dictatorial. He didn't need to take that tone. I don't really know why he did. I can only, this is me assuming, by the way, please, I do not know a dicky bird on this because certainly no one's going to tell me this at this stage. My sense is that he must have known he's got some internal backing to say that. I just feel that he must know that the sporting directors are with him on that and that the ownership to some level are with him on that. Because if you don't know that they are okay with you having that view of, we're just doing it my way and that's going to work and they're going to be proved wrong. If you don't know that, my God, that's even more risky. So I can't believe he's done it in a position of not knowing he's got some backing on it. But I promise you, that's an assumption on my part.
I guess I think where the extra risk is in telling the fans what they should and shouldn't value is that recently, after a string of, like, let's just be candid, Copenhagen, bad performance,
Yep.
City, bad performance, he has come out and said, no, we deserve something from these games. I thought we played great, blah blah blah. When it's like clear to anyone with a brain that like that is not the case. Okay, like I can understand there are a lot of things about football and his philosophy and things that I just don't get, and I'm not supposed to get because he has the coaching licenses and I don't have
Exactly.
coaching licenses, and that is okay. Like I totally accept that. But to come out after we play poorly and say, "Wow, I can't believe how great that was," like that's where you start
Yeah.
to lose people. And then on top of it, you don't play extraordinarily well against the Leicester team that, let's face it, is going down with some ease this year. And then you come out and go and proclaim that your way is the only way. Like
Well, also, and
it's
then
so strange to me, man.
the other quote that really jumped out at me was when he said, "This is not PlayStation football. It's not like playing on a PlayStation." That was so condescending. That was so condescending. Nobody, no Chelsea fan I know loads of Chelsea fans. I know you guys. I know loads of Chelsea fans who go to the games. I know Chelsea fans who don't go to the games. Nobody in their right mind thinks that football is like PlayStation football. Nobody in their right mind just expects Chelsea to turn up and thrash them 6-0 and da da da. No one's stupid. But it was so condescending, that quote, to say this is not PlayStation football. Nobody thinks it is PlayStation football. Like, nobody thinks that, but they can still want different things or expect more or hope for more. That that was also a red flag to me, because if he actually thinks that, then that tells you he thinks that some of the supporters are stupid.
Well, yeah, what do you think is going on here? Is this a like him kind of is it him feeling himself and like being overconfident? Is it him feeling the pressure and wanting to like preempt what he knows this job can do, which is eat you up if you underperform? Like, what's your sense being in the room? Because to me, there's been like a tonal change
Yeah,
from
I
the
agree.
beginning of the season, truth teller, whatever, to
Yeah.
whatever this is now, where you're you're looking at a guy who's like clearly grasping at whatever he can find to positively show that his methods are working and that the team has improved greatly when the results have not improved at all.
Well, that's it. Can only be pressure. It can only be pressure, and I would say some of the real sort of dictatorial chat and tone has come about since he's done his U-turn on the Champions League target a little bit as well.
Mm.
The tone has shifted around that. Um, and it feels like him having to accept that the Champions League has to be a target, and there's no reason not to say that publicly. It feels like that's put pressure onto him, and he's having to try to justify everything he does. And I don't think he does. Look, if he comes out after that Leicester game and said, "Look, it's not a perfect performance, but we're 11 games out from the end of the season. This is just about victories. We had to win the Southampton game. We had to win the Copenhagen game. We had to win the Leicester game. We've won them all. We can do things better. There's room for improvement. We will improve. We want to improve, but we've won them all."
Hmm.
And even when you're playing not great teams, to go into 3 games knowing you have to win them all is not an easy situation. And we've done that. That's all he had to say. That's all he had to say. It was easy. It was easy, easy
Yeah.
win there. And I think
Especially,
people accept that. People, people accept that the team aren't going to play well every week. And you can say that it's a good result, not a great performance. We want to work harder. People accept that. But don't try and tell people that blue is red, or call
well,
them
right.
stupid for not
I,
agreeing with you.
I relish the games where you win and don't play that well. I think
Exactly.
that's a proof point that maybe what you're doing can work if that
Exactly.
is
And
the case.
he could say that as well. This is a Chelsea team probably in the last few years who, if they don't play well, don't win. So, if we can learn to win while not playing brilliantly, fantastic.
He's also, I think, falling into the atmosphere trap a little bit. And look, I say this as a person who's been a lot to Chelsea, despite the fact that I do not live in the UK. I understand some of the commentary on the atmosphere. I have seen it with my own eyes. I was there for an FA Cup third round match against Southampton that was so cold and brutal and not fun, and the atmosphere was nowhere. And then I've been there on nights where it absolutely exploded. Like it's a variable thing. Let's just say
It's a
that.
really variable thing.
Um, but I think in these moments, if I were him, and I am not, and I am not giving him advice, this is not the trap I would fall into, because it's not the fans' fault that the team hasn't performed. The fans are looking for something to cheer about, and he credited he says, and I think the wording is wrong, and maybe someone needs to coach him a little bit for sure. But in the moment, we can hear our fans. It is so nice. Away, they're loud, but even at home, sometimes I completely understand when there is a negative feeling. But today, how many chances did we create on the way back from Copenhagen? The staff, we were watching Leicester games at 2 a.m. I just so a couple of things here. It reads, I didn't get the video clip of this, so I'm just reading it. So I'm just saying that out
Yeah.
loud to everyone who's listening on the thing here. It reads as condescending. Did it did his voiceover make it condescending in real time?
He didn't say it in a condescending voice, but I still stood there and felt that this is condescending. Yes. I don't know really how to articulate that better. He didn't say it in kind of a sarcastic voice or a condescending voice. There was no tone to his voice as such. But I stood there throughout much of it thinking this is condescending, to be quite honest with you. The general tone of it was condescending.
Why I call this a trap is because you have covered Chelsea for a long time. I've been a supporter for a long time. Every time that the results go against you, the pressure ramps up. I think there have been quite a few managers, not all of them, quite a few that have been like, well, where's our support? Like,
Mm.
why isn't the atmosphere lifting up my team an extra 10%? Somewhat understand that, totally get it. But again, in a merit based world, have you earned that as at the same point as a manager, as a team? Chelsea have been bad at home this year for the most part.
Yeah, you have to have the credit in the bank, in my view, to do it.
That's kind of my point, which is like if Chelsea were unbeaten at home and the atmosphere was flat, that's one thing, right? I think you could squarely go, hey, we just need more. We need more to keep winning at home. We have all these great home matches to make the Champions League at the end of the year. Can we do something here? Can we lift the support? But it's not as if we've played well at home and given a ton to be excited about. And I don't know. I just feel like of all the things that you as a manager at Chelsea Football Club should be worried about, perhaps this isn't the thing I would target if I were him.
No, and you're right. It seems to come up at different points with every manager. I mean, Mourinho famously went full blasted it and said it's like playing in an empty stadium. And he did lose a lot of fans at that point. He lost a lot of support, and it was something that he could never really quite shake off. That took some of the gloss away from that incredible relationship he has with the club. And if Mourinho, with everything he achieved and the culture he set at Chelsea, can get himself into a problem on that, then you're on really sticky wicket when you're doing it when you haven't achieved anything yet, and with the season very much in the balance. You need credit in the bank to do it, and also, first, it's a variable thing because if you compare it to other stadiums, Newcastle, flat as a pancake for their Brighton home games this season on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon. Put them on an evening game in a different game. It's a cauldron. It's an incredible atmosphere. There's variables here. I mean, Chelsea were playing at 2 p.m. on a Sunday afternoon against Leicester City. That kickoff time and that time of match and type of match is generally always going to be quite flattish. It's a horrible kickoff time, really. Nobody really likes it. It just is a flat feeling to it. Villa, they drew at home to Ipswich on a Saturday afternoon My dad was there. He said it's one of the worst atmospheres he knows at Villa Park. A week later, we play Chelsea under the lights, and it's roaring. It's just environmental issues. It's the way football is. Atmospheres ebb and flow with whether it's a night game, who you're playing, the time of the kickoff, just where the fan base kind of are at that point, how the match goes as well. And what I would say is the atmosphere notably lifted at the times when the game became ever so slightly chaotic because the crowd responded to it. So that tells you everything. The crowd are also quiet because they're having to sit watching the ball go sideways, sideways, backwards, sideways, backwards, sideways. And don't get me wrong, a bit like you, Nick, I have no coaching badges. I fully accept that that may well be the best way to play football. It may well bring a level of control that evens out a lot of deficiencies within a squad. And over the course of the season, when we come to the end of the season, we will say that style of football achieved Chelsea X, Y, and Z. But you can't sit there and cheer it and engage in it. It's impossible to engage with. Whereas if there's a little bit of chaos in the game and there's a wild tackle from Cucurella or there's a great tackle in their break-up pitch and everybody gets excited, you naturally engage with it. That's just human nature, and he
A
can't
long
dictate
ball,
that.
a long ball over the top that one of your players gets a hold of, and then something. It's just.
Exactly.
I think you're right.
Exactly.
Like it's a part of football. It's a part of what has historically made the Premier League so entertaining are
This
those
is it.
moments of chaos. Like
Yeah.
it's not the Spanish league, it's not the Italian league, it's not the French league. This is a physical league with some incredibly breathtaking moments of skill and will that are attached to it. And I've just I know what what makes that crowd sing. Like it, and it's that. It is the hard challenge. It is a little bit of chaos. And it goes both ways. Like when you're open at the back, like we were last year, the stats bear it out as I've already shared. It can go the other way, right? It can turn on you pretty quick. So
Yeah, of course.
this isn't all sunshine and rainbows at all. But I mean, it's infinitely more entertaining to watch.
And I
Like
think earlier in the season, the other problem with the brand of football at the moment is earlier in the season,
it was like
because
that.
it, but also there was more chaos. But also though, in games where they did control it, because they were playing well when the ball did get up to the top of the pitch, you could at least anticipate that excitement was coming.
Something.
If they
Yeah.
knocked it round at the back, you knew that once Cole got it up front, or there was a ball out to Nicholas Jackson, or Nonny's on there and he beats a man, excitement is coming because of the run they've been through up front with Cole struggling, Nicholas Jackson out. They've lost their rhythm up front. There's no expectation that once they knock it round at the back, that eventually they're going to get to a point where it becomes exciting either. So it's also a byproduct of the last 10 games or whatever it is, and the run they've been on. So it was nonsensical to go for. And the other thing that I do really want to point out, and it's not necessarily for Maresca to take into view when he's doing his press conferences, but you know, they are chasing the corporate. They are chasing the match day, like a lot of Premier League clubs are. I've said this
Yep.
many times on there. This is not just a Chelsea thing. They are charging £5,000 for a dugout club ticket or whatever it is, or 12,500 for the Man U game for a dugout ticket, and that will impact the atmosphere. It will
Mhm.
impact the atmosphere, and football clubs in the Premier League, not just Chelsea, have to wrestle with that. Where if their managers are going to come out and criticise the home support, they have to take their own piece of responsibility of that, because the way the game is going does impact the atmosphere, absolutely, undoubtedly. And the other thing to add is Chelsea do have the oldest average season ticket holder in the Premier League. I think they do have an older fan base, and some of these guys are quite old. They're not going to stand there roaring their guts out for 90 minutes. They're going to roar when they're excited, and that's it. And that's absolutely fine too. There
Mhm.
are a lot of issues that go into this. Some of those, like I said, not necessarily that Maresca needs to consider in his post-match pre-match conferences.
Shouts to Connor Holden for the stat pack, and then Brent Staben for the question. We're going to take our final ad break, and then come back and talk a little bit about Todd Boehly's quotes at the FT conference, and take your questions in a mailbag setup. So thanks to the sponsors, and we'll be right back. All right, Matt. Last part here, and I know that there wasn't a ton of super interesting stuff from the Todd Boehly quotes at the FT conference, but he did talk a lot about some different sort of angles. He talked a lot about Chelsea. I knew you'd like this quote. The one thing I've learned about the British press is they exaggerate a lot of stuff, or exaggerate a lot and leave stuff out. I'm not going to comment. We've agreed on a strategy, and the way forward is stuff getting done. I don't look in the rearview mirror. This is on the ownership dynamic and the ownership battle. Thoughts?
Well, we do leave stuff out, Todd. And if I wrote everything I knew, you'd be in big trouble.
So there it is. Any thoughts on I guess the evolving dynamic between him, Bedard, Clear Lake, and his side of the ownership group? Has there been any news or notes on that?
No, I mean they were both there actually at the weekend. I don't know whether the TV cameras picked it up. Notably, once again, not really sitting in the same vicinity as one another. Never seemed to sit next to each other or really in front or behind each other. The optics of that are the optics of that. I've maintained that I think this will have to come to a head, but there's too much at stake in the season, the way the season's gone. Both men have very sensibly, should I add, sort of not fanned the flames of what blew up in September, and not let it sort of distract the season. And I think this credit should be taken for that. And I do expect at some stage it will get resolved one way or the other. And I would have thought there's a good chance in the summer we will start to head in a direction of that. But at the moment, it seems to have been kind of parked. But as I say, just through optics, you can see that there doesn't seem to be any coming together particularly. They don't do anything together. There are no public engagements together. And when they go and watch the team that they share, they don't even sit next to each other.
He cannot predict the future on if it will be the same by this time next year. Notable. I think just to that point. He did mention the strategy a little bit, and he said you can't turn left and turn right every 3 minutes. That might be some of the advice if you get to really boil it down. He said the most important thing is we're thinking about measuring success in years. You have to think both short term and long term. We're focused on a combination of both those things and seeking the best way to execute. It is a balancing act. Um, Fair, unfair?
I, I look. I think it's a lot of sort of sitting on the fence, and once you sort of unscramble it, there's not actually a lot of substance to that. But I think fair. I also think fair. I don't think what he says there is stupid or ridiculous. It's completely reasoned, but it doesn't really give you any insight either. It's answering I don't know what the exact question was, but it's answering a question without really giving anyone anything to sort of get their teeth into. But fair, yeah.
He also makes the excellent point that strikers are hard to find. You don't go into the grocery store and say, I'm going to get a striker. It's an amazing skill set, and you have to have the right mentality. I mean, this does ring pretty true to me, although I think it would have been interesting to see them try and go to the store and get a striker.
I mean, look, that was a quote that obviously, when reproduced in black and white, looks a bit silly.
Yeah.
I think while he sat on the stage in the environment that he's in a relaxed conversation, I think it's a perfectly acceptable quote.
Yeah,
He's right. What he's saying is striker's one of the hardest positions to buy for.
it
And
is.
if you look in the last few years in the Premier League, it absolutely is. So it's right. In black and white, it looks silly. Watched in the context of the event he was in, it doesn't look as silly.
He essentially brushed off the fan criticism, saying in June it will be three
Mm.
years in charge. It's not a lot of time when you get to 50 or 60 or 70 years old in life. It's a whirlwind of activity and a steep learning curve, but I think it's also a good thing. Uh, I think it's par for the course. The sooner you learn, you're not going to keep all the people happy all the time. The freedom shows up. Okay. And then I think the last thing, and probably the most interesting part of this whole chat, was suggesting the Premier League give club shares each season. It says,
Yes.
as an investor in sports, I have the ability to drive emotions and outcomes. The top football brands are well equipped to grow in value. The NFL is probably worth 200 billion, Netflix is 400 billion. So the question is, would you rather own the NFL or Netflix? My bet would be on the NFL. They will continue to create great content. Now, if you look at the football in Europe, there's an evolution going on. The stadiums were built with utilitarian mindset, and when you uh, and what you're going to see is more professional sports coming to Europe, like the NBA. The product will evolve, provide new revenue opportunities. If you grow revenue, you grow value. There's a bit of an unorganized landscape in European football, which reminds me of the retail sports network market in America. There's a handful of things that need to be sorted. One of the challenges is relegation in football. It's hard to price. If everyone was equal, you'd have a 15% chance of relegation, but everyone isn't equal. So you have to work out how to best evaluate that, or address that valuation change, I should say. Relegation is cultural and not going anywhere. So why not every season when a team is in the Premier League, you get one share of EPL stock, and if you go down, you get to keep that stock. So he's basically talking about ways to like bake in the risk, I guess, of relegation and create some sort of share system that means that you do continue to share in the profits of the league, even if you are potentially not in it, because that is
Yeah, I
one
mean,
thing that has been brought up as relegation becomes more and more pricey, right?
yeah, I mean, we already have parachute payments for 3 years, so doesn't feel like a huge shift away from that. It's an interesting look. The immediate reaction when he says it is you think, oh no, 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 no. He's trying to get rid of relegation here, but actually he's not trying to get rid of relegation. And I've said before that these guys have come in and do have a slight disruptive view on football and the Premier League, and are willing to look at things that people like me are very scared to look at because it might change everything and might ruin everything. I don't. I'd love to actually talk more with him about this because I don't quite understand how it'd be that much different from the parachute payments. And also, if you have a share, do you therefore retain your vote on Premier League matters even when you're not in the Premier League? So do you? Because they have the shareholders meetings where they all vote on the rule
Yeah,
changes.
if you're a shareholder.
If you're a shareholder, are you in the meeting? Do you have an equal vote, even if you haven't been in the Premier League for 5 years? I don't. I don't know whether he's really thought it out, or and he has all the answers to that, or whether he was thinking off the hoof a bit. But I don't like dismissing this stuff because, as I say, I think it usually gets dismissed out of a fear and a traditionalism that can hold you back. But I don't properly understand how that share would work and would be so much more advantageous than parachute payments, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah.
I also don't really understand why he's worrying himself about relegation clubs, because obviously that's not where Chelsea are going to be. So I don't quite understand why he's having to think about that. But I suppose he's trying to boost the entire product, because if they boost the entire product, it's good for everybody in the product. I've answered my own question there.
There you go. Logic pattern sorted. All right. Well, let's move off of this and on to just a quick mailbag. We're gonna go lightning round on this, Matt. First one from row one. Any update on the Mudryk situation?
No, I mean, legally I have to be really careful here. All I can only repeat what we know, because that's all really I'm legally allowed to say, and I wouldn't want either of us to get into trouble. So we know that he was given a ban while they worked on the B sample. They haven't announced anything on the B sample yet. That has dragged on longer than was expected, although no official timeline was given for that. There's not been any communication to say that ban has been extended or that ban has ended. So we have to assume that he is still in this kind of holding ban. That's all we can really say. It's such a legal minefield to speculate on anything or talk around it that you have to be really careful, I'm afraid.
Let's go to another one, a fun one, just to do a little palate cleanser. From 11 Aspies asking a very poignant question for the name. If Matt could have 11 clones of a single player, which player would be most likely to win him a Champions League? He cannot say Azpilicueta.
Easiest question ever. Easiest question ever. N'Golo Kante.
Wow. Okay. I love it. Chris L commented on this and said he's definitely going John McGinn.
Absolutely not. Although if you had to have 11 of the most significant football asses, you would go for John McGinn, who has, alongside Eden Hazard, actually, maybe they'd make a good duo in that. But no, N'Golo Kante all day long, easiest answer ever.
All right. Well, there you go, Chris L. How about that? Eat your heart out. We got a question from T Clot. I think I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyway because it's a thoughtful question. He says, will the club amend their expectations for Maresca in light of the club and sporting directors loaning out a net total of 4 players if Trev cancels Disasi and Amogu cancels Cassidy without bolstering the squad? I get Chile and Carney weren't getting minutes, but Joao and Vega would go a long way in limiting minutes for other players. What are your thoughts on end of season amendments or expectations for evaluation?
No, what I wrote this some time ago when everyone was talking about the title, and I wrote that the Chelsea ownership were going to wait until March to see where they were in the table, to see what the realistic goals were, and set and sort of chase targets accordingly. And maybe a bit before March, but obviously a few weeks ago we had Maresca publicly say the Champions League, and I think we can take from that everybody at the club has looked at the table and decided, well, Champions League has to be the main target. That is the target. Nothing's going to get amended from there. No, basically.
Row one asking who we are targeting in the summer. A couple others have noted the reporting of Kobe Mainu and Ademola Lookman. Any rumors that you are hearing to start the silliest of seasons?
I don't see Lookman at all. I think he's actually, you still think of Lookman as a young player, but I don't really think he fits into Chelsea's profile of signing. Yeah. Look, I think they will go hard for a striker. Depending on what happens with outs and various other things, I think that there could be a centre back. Look, I know there's been a bit of briefing around the goalkeeper. My opinion, not based on information, because I haven't been trying to take briefings on the goalkeeper. My opinion is they will have to go for a goalkeeper. They will have to. If they want to achieve their targets next season, particularly if they play in the Champions League, they'll have to end up going for a goalkeeper, no matter what they might want to do at the moment.
Yeah, it is what it is. Let's see. Does Matt think Villa can make top 5 this season? Also, thoughts on Forest chances?
No, Villa are playing for whether they can get top 7 and trying to win an FA Cup and go as far as the Champions League. I don't think Villa mathematically are in a shake-up for 4th and 5th, but they'd have to go in an incredible run with the traffic there. If they can get a top 7 Europa League, go really far in the FA Cup and go really far in the Champions League, that's a good season. Forest, that Man City result has really changed my opinion on Forest. Yeah, I really thought I could see them dropping back into the pack. And that Man City result has just given them a little bit of distance. They go to Ipswich on this weekend. If they can now win at Ipswich to go into that international break on the back of a draw with Arsenal, a victory over Man City, and then a victory over Ipswich to take them into the international break, wow, they'd have to have some blow up not to do it from there.
Yeah. Okay. And then finally, from row one, who potentially you will be seeing at our live show on April 2nd. All right, April 1st, I should say. Is Matt sponsoring beer for London is Blue folks on the tour?
What?
Yeah, Matt, come on. What's going on? Have you set aside budget for this whole thing?
I tend to waive my fee for these things in lieu of free beer.
Yeah,
I thought that's how this works, not the other way around. No one told me you'd done a switcheroo on me.
It's a tough beat for row one there. Tough beat.
But if they want to come and say hi on the night and get a recommendation for whatever beer's on the tap, I'm happy to do that.
All right. So no budget for you, row one, nor the nearly 70 people who will be in attendance at Classic Football Shirts. We're very much looking forward to this night because it will be a tremendous occasion. But look, we will be back during the international break. I think we're going to talk a little bit about Chelsea finances and more during that break in a couple of weeks. But got a big job ahead Thursday, Sunday for Copenhagen at home, Arsenal away. We will be talking to you very soon, Matt. Thank you for everything here. And until next time, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.